turned therapists. Our focus in these episodes is to humanize the athlete experience beyond the lines of their arena. In this podcast, we will explore the whole athlete, highlighting the mental, emotional, and social aspects of their journey.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Millennium Counseling's Athlete Wellness Podcast. Today we are joined by Olga, who I'm going to allow to introduce herself in a little bit, but she's a former Division I two-sport athlete. She is a Chicago native. She started and now runs a all-girls basketball program. She has been working in sales for the last 20 years and is absolutely killing it. So, Olga, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you.
Thanks, Lilly. Appreciate the invite and thanks for making me feel at home here. I'm Olga Gvozdenovic. I am the founder of OMG Basketball Academy. I grew up in Chicago, a Chicago native, and have been passionate about bringing a point of view to young athletes' athletic careers through females' eyes. Because it's just been a really, I think, important and impactful part of my life growing up. Being a two-sport athlete and from Duke University, athletics played such a large role for me. And so it's been super important. And so thanks for having me here.
Yes, no, we're super happy to have you. We have definitely been in similar circles for like a long time, I feel like. We went to high school, not together, but we did go to the same high school, state champion right here. I did not get that far. However, so I guess I just want to, tell us a little bit about how did it start, sports for you? I'm sure there's a family impact, and we talk about that a lot on the podcast about just sort of how you surround yourself with and how that influences you. But how did it all start for you?
That's an easy question, right?
Yeah, I know,
talk about
right?
myself all day long. But I think, growing up, athletics were a huge part of my life. I was always involved in sports, especially basketball and tennis. They both became a passion of mine. I was fortunate enough that in high school, I was around a really strong community of passionate basketball players and passionate athletes that really wanted to go and push themselves and excel. So when you're in a community like that, it forces you to up your level as a athlete and play and succeed. So during that time, it really taught me not only just disciplines, but it taught me teamwork and a sense of community. And in college, I took all of those learnings and I basically applied it, and it helped shape my overall experience. And it gave me the confidence to really drive who I am today and post-college, even the same thing.
Yeah. Obviously, it's not always like sunshine and rainbows and all of that kind of stuff. I know I talk a lot about on the podcast my struggles with injury, and that sort of made me confront the mental health side of athletes or athletics and especially basketball. But did you have that support growing up for mental health, whether that be like at your universities or even in your high school level or all that kind of stuff? Or I know you have extra support through like friends and family and coaches. That's a huge role for sure. But were you ever able to be around more professional mental health support during your career?
Yeah, I mean, mental health when I was playing, because I graduated high school in 99 and then graduated university in 03. So a little bit of time between the two of us. But, mental health wasn't necessarily focused on as much as I was growing up in sports. It was something that we were told to stay tough, stay focused, grind through it, and move on, right? I think today, and some of my players that I've come through the organization, we really try to balance all of that, right? Not just the player and as the whole player. And so we even spent a lot of time at OMG talking about, positive mindsets and mental strength, not just from those voices in your head when you're missing free throws, but things of like, how do you dedicate yourself and get up every single morning to say that, like, I'm going to put my best self forward? Those are some things that we focus on. And so, practices that I learned growing up, coming back to my Loyola Academy days, was you had that group of people that were super excited about playing. And then people would get injured, like you talked about, right? I had an injury in the McDonald's All-American game. I'd signed my commitment to go to Duke. I tore my ACL at UConn's gym. And, it was a point of like, I felt like I was supposed to be indestructible. And now all of a sudden I'm laying horizontal on the floor going,
Yeah.
what's next? And it had to come to terms with reality of it, right? Because I think at one point I remember laying on the floor going, you're going to Duke, you're playing against 6 other freshmen that you're going to Duke with. Like we had an amazing class at Duke, 7 All-Americans that were going to Duke that year, which is crazy. And so I'm staring, up at them as I'm crawled on the floor in the first half hour of practice with my knee. And I look and I see my community of my future teammates there, but you're also in this headspace of, okay, but what am I going to do? Right? I know that they are just getting to know me, but I still have this injury that I have to deal with. And I basically just told them to tape it up and like, let's go. Because I didn't think it was a big deal. Like I can get through it. I can get up, I can walk. And I had it taped and then it just wouldn't stay. And then I knew something was really wrong. And it was hard because you're at this point of like feeling invincible. And then now you've relied on your body for so much, for so long. And it's been at top levels of performing. And it just wasn't doing it anymore. And so I really had to step back and really try to understand, like, who can I go to? What can I do? And a part of me being a 2-sport athlete with basketball being a very heavy team sport and tennis, which is my other sport that I grew up playing up, being more individual, I went back to my individual place of like, what can I do to make myself stable and feel better? And I just went back to like, how do I go back and work out? That's my go-to spot, right? Like when I'm feeling in a place where I don't have control over things, I go back to how can I go and work out and find my kind of mental
Zen.
Zen. Exactly. And so that's what I kept doing, but I just had to modify. So I really learned my body at an early age, I think, because of my injury. But it's not like I got to go and talk to my coach and say, I'm struggling, because I wasn't taught to share that feeling. It was more internalized, right? Whereas today, I think we focus on our players at OMG of talking through it. Like, what is it that's bothering you? Because it's more than just coming in and putting baskets in for the hour and a half of practice that you're going to do each day. But where are you so that you're not just going through the motions? And I think at some point when I was looking back on it, now that, I'm outside of my playing days, but I'm looking back at it with my injury, I was going through the motions of knowing that my body would eventually get back to where it was. But I was going through the motion of just get through it. Like you're going to keep powering through it, keep grinding. And then at some point you realize after multiple doctor's visits that it's actually torn. You're going to have to go have surgery.
Totally.
And that was a totally different part of a mental place.
And that switch is super
where it's totally tough, right? I think there was a point where I had finished my last doctor's appointment and it's interesting because I remember specific points of the experience better than others.
It's a trauma, right? Yeah, you don't remember, you bury it.
Exactly. And I remember I'd finished all of my doctor's appointments. I had 3 different folks and top doctors in North America look at my knee. And I ended up setting on Midwest Orthopedic Group here in Chicago, which still keeps me together today. But the interesting thing is I sat there and finished that last appointment with them. They confirmed it was an ACL tear with the meniscus. And I got a phone call from the coaching staff at Duke. And I was just so happy to hear from them. I never once thought when I picked up the phone that they would consider taking a scholarship away. But the words came out that said, we heard you got injured. I was so excited to talk to the coaching staff, and they said, we heard you got injured. Don't worry, we're going to honor your scholarship. And at that point, it shook my world. Yeah. Because I was
this is the real deal.
This is real. Yeah. This is a point where I got to kind of get my shit together and figure out how am I going to get myself whole and mentally and physically so that I can come and perform at a Division I level. Because look, at the end of the day, not all of us have the dedication, the determination, the skill, or the talent to play at those levels.
From an injury and then play at that level. Yeah.
And so it takes a lot of focus. And I knew that for me, being in my teens and being heavily recruited into college, that I had that, that 1% that everybody talks about. So I kind of use that as my level set of when shit really got sour in my head, like I kept kind of coming back to that. You have the swag, like get there, go back to what you know. And that was the part that I think kept me going without really knowing that I had somebody to talk to. And it wasn't until I got to college that I think I realized that I had somebody to talk to, because a lot of that stuff I was navigating on my own. Luckily, I had a cousin that is basically like a sibling to me, that had also gone through a knee injury when he was playing basketball at Northwestern.
Okay, yeah.
And is now an orthopedic doctor. So interesting enough is that like I talked to him about things that he was doing without really knowing that it was a mental health check-in, but it was me realizing that I had somebody else that I knew that went through it and was still doing great things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think what people oftentimes like as being a therapist, it's like you have to come in with this agenda and you need to like check all these things off the box. And I always start my sessions with first clients, like a first intake. I'm like, we're literally here to just like speak to one another and I'm here to listen and we're just here to process. So that sounds like what you were able to do with your cousin. You're literally just having a conversation where you feel comfortable. You allow yourself to slow down to actually check in how you are feeling in those moments, which I think is very hard, especially in the athletic community too, because you're just so driven by like end results.
Right.
So oftentimes it's hard to slow down and check in and actually ask yourself, like, how are you feeling? But I do think as a coach at OMG too, which I'm so happy to be a part of, like
we're so happy to have
yes, it's really great. I think we allow ourselves to slow down, especially at the beginning of practice too. Like it's not like, okay, boom, 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 boom. Like, yes, we're on task. We have a schedule, but we're also like, how's everyone doing? Or we're kind of like lighten the mood a little bit. I'm like, so happy to see you guys. Like, how's everyone doing? I always ask my like fifth graders or fifth graders, I'm like, what was your favorite part of school today? Like, that's kind of my first question to them or something when we're waiting for the gym to open and stuff like that. And they're like, I'm really tired. And I'm like, cool. I love to know that information, like that you've had a long day and I'm able to recognize that's maybe why you're not making as much eye contact with me or listening when I'm explaining an out of bounds play or whatever. Like you kind of just see them check in and check out. I'm like, you also just had however many hours of school all day today.
Right.
So
and
you have
probably
to like
maybe another activity
before
practice. And that's the other thing that I'm seeing a lot, running this program for, oh my gosh. I mean, I started teaching basketball in the summer of 1999. So 40 something years.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing is that you see that there's a lot of over-programming happening of children today, meaning that once that last school bell rings of the day and it ends the day, there's a lot of activities that kids participate in prior to actually them going home and like doing homework and having a meal with their family.
Yes.
And they are getting shuffled from one place to another. So we spend some time, and you were sharing it, is at OMG, we kind of got to get them when they walk into the gym, right? After mom or dad or whoever drops them off at practice, there is a conscious note that comes in that once you come into the gym, it's for practice. Whatever happened at school, whatever happened at your other activity, if you got in a fight with your sibling, like we try to separate that stuff so that they are in the moment and present, because that's where their most active learning's going to be. And we also know that, when these kids are having positive practices where they're feeling like they're accomplishing something, that confidence level is growing. And those are super important, I think, learning times, especially for, because we're focused on 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade girls. So those are really important times of girls' development to build confidence, to feel like they're achieving something.
Yeah.
And you have to do that with a in the moment present mind, right? Not thinking about how tired you are. Or,
yeah, exactly.
What crazy things have happened throughout the day. And so I think that moment of checking in is super, super important. And that will apply to anything as we get through life, right?
Another thing that's coming up too, and that you have preached for all of us coaches, and to kind of make sure that our girls are doing this on like practice or in tournaments when we have time in between a game, it's like all go sit together, talk to each other. Like, grab your water, grab your Gatorade, go to the bathroom, whatever. But like, no, you're not pulling out your phone or like scrolling on your Apple Watch or whatever it is. Like, sit down, talk to one another. If you have questions about the plays that we're running, like find the hallway in the facility and figure it out. Like, imagine that there's a hoop over there and like figure it out. Or just be like, oh, like, what are you doing after this? And actually communicate and talk to one another. But I think it's so nice to like kind of have so many different like perspectives. Like it was you, then me, and now we're like here. And it's like, I remember literally like I played in like 7th, 8th grade. I was playing soccer, volleyball, and basketball. Mm-hmm. And on Wednesday nights, and I literally, it's funny what you remember and what you don't remember. Right. I remember changing in the car like 2 different times and all of my gear. And like, but honestly, like it's wild. And my dad and I always talk about this, but like without sports and that, like my time management, I don't know where I would be. Like, I know.
Absolutely.
Like, I think that's one skill that when you do talk to like athletes that aren't playing as much anymore, it's totally a change, but you're able to learn that. So the over programming, I totally think is happening, but I think there's so many like positive things that you're able to take out from it too. It's like, okay, I have an exam on whatever day, but I know that Wednesdays are big nights for me and I have this, and that. So that means I need to like be proactive and plan my week and figure it all out. And like, I remember doing that when I was like,
thinking ahead.
Like thinking ahead. Yeah.
That's super important. And I think that's one of the things that, you know, when you see like younger kids that are just defaulting to scrolling on their Apple Watch or looking at their phone in quote unquote dead time when there's not stuff when you're around people.
Yeah.
You're basically defaulting to just filling the time, right? Whereas I think you and I growing up, I know I've had so many meals inside of a car.
Oh, yes.
With my parents. And changing for different things between basketball and tennis or just a family event, right? But those are things that if I forgot my shoes at the start of the day before I went to school and I didn't pack my basketball gear for practice or my tennis rackets for tennis practice later in the day.
That's a massive problem.
It's a massive problem. And it's not like my mom and dad were there to figure it out for me. They were like, oh, you're now going to miss your $80 tennis lesson.
Exactly.
What are you going to do for me?
Exactly.
Right? Because one, it costs money, and 2, you're missing out on getting better that day. So I think like the biggest thing is there's a ton of learning that goes on with it. And so when we talk about at OMG community and communication, that's a super important part of it, because you and I talking in a group of women, right, about like things that are going on at practice, it makes us start thinking about, oh, maybe there's something that I'm not thinking about in practice that you're thinking about that then we can then incorporate together and it'll help us think ahead. And I think that thinking ahead is a super big skill for later down the life when we get all into.
100%. I think also, which our injury stories, I didn't know they were so similar. Mine was like right when I had committed to, and I was just like, but a huge thing that came up, and I know we're jumping around, but a huge thing that came up to me was just like, I literally remember laying down and looking at like the lights above me, and I was like, who am I if I can't play this sport?
Right.
Like my identity was so beyond connected, still working through that. But I think that's why I'm like here now and we're having these conversations. Like it's obviously so intertwined and it's something that we care about and we put a lot of time, money, made a lot of sacrifices to be like so involved in these sports. But like the identity piece really came out to me when you were talking, because I was just like, okay. Or when I talk to my clients now and some of them that are dealing with injuries, they're like, why would my team like want to hang out with me? Like I haven't contributed to the team once, like, or we just celebrate. And I'm like, yes, you have, but it's like rewiring your brain. Like I'm not able to like score points or rebounds or whatever it is. And you're like, but where's my value in this team?
Right.
And I think what like this day and age is doing is like, there are so many different roles that you can be playing and like opening everyone's eyes to that. Like, sure, I coach 4th, 5th graders. Like they're not totally like so concerned with playing time or like I'm like, that's when you need to communicate and like cheer each other on. Like just because you're not playing or whatever it may be, or other things pop up or you miss a week because you had a family event and you need to come back and feel that you're still a part of something. But I think pointing in our conversation about injury is really pointing to like the identity piece and also the life after sport piece. So like, sure, whether it's an injury or it's like you've played for as long as you can, whether you go off and you play something else. But I think, how did like OMG come about? Like after you stopped playing, you were like, I know I want to do this, or there was kind of a missing piece, a missing link. You knew you wanted to be in like a coaching, teaching profession kind of, or throw that into your lieu of things that you're doing. But I don't know. I think I came to Millennium and the athlete wellness division because I was like, one, I think it's pretty easy to connect to a lot of athletes just because I've gone through it. I saw the need for sure. And I was like, this is a community that I still want to be a part of. And I knew it was going to look different, but I was like, I'm not ready to like completely lose that part of me. And I imagine that was maybe how some of OMG came about.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit, right? Like, I think my identity growing up was always Olga plays basketball and plays tennis, and she's an athlete, right?
We're also
and
both really tall.
we're
So,
both really tall.
yeah. So it's like, so do you play basketball or volleyball? And I'm like, all right, here we go. The first question.
Yeah. So, and I think like the thing is that I lean into that identity because I love the
You're
sport.
proud. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm proud of who I am,
Mhm.
right? And then I think that was ingrained in me as a very young age. Like, stand tall
Mhm.
at almost 6'4".
Yeah.
Like, just stand tall and
Mhm.
stand proud and define who you are.
Mhm.
And I think my parents taught me how to have a voice, which also helped very young because being tall as a kid, people would talk to you a lot older than
Totally.
you thought you were.
Yeah.
So I think it was
Like,
just...
I don't know if it always correlated that way. I'm like,
But-
I guess I know what you're talking about.
Yes. But I think the thing is that it comes back to what you're talking about is roles, right? And I think I fit that role very well. And when I got injured, knowing that I wasn't going to be scoring the leading scorer of every single game like I was, I had to redefine that role. And so at OMG, how that came to be is that I was going into college saying, this is great. Because at the time, women's sports wasn't where it's
Oh,
today.
yeah.
The WNBA had just started.
Yeah.
It was not a blimp on anybody's radar. It was...
Until very recently, honestly.
Right? Like,
yeah.
my role models growing up were mostly men. Martina Navratilova, I got to see play at the Virginia Slims tournament at UIC. I got to watch, like, Gabby Reese is still one of my, was one of my role models growing up. But we're not that far in age either. So if somebody asked me who they were, it was like Michael Jordan and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah, you're like classic answers.
Classic answers coming from a basketball in Chicago. I think, though, coming out of high school into a place where Duke was a basketball dynasty, legacy, right? Like, they are known for basketball at Duke. I was trying to understand, and coming in injured, how am I going to define my role of who I am as an individual, knowing that I'm not going to be the one that's leading scoring every single game.
Also, your first time in college, like you're
Yeah, my
a
first time in
freshman,
college,
like
yeah.
talk about academics and just like meeting people. People
Right.
always, you're like, how are you going to be on the team? Like as a freshman, I'm like, I'm trying to figure out where the like cafeteria is. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Or like classes and like, it's not you like your schedule. Like there's so many different things. And I feel like people forget to talk about, you're also transitioning to like a new team.
Yeah.
And maybe not like everyone who goes play Division I anything is like the best of the best in their town, and then they come and you throw it all together. So I feel like people always talk about that. I'm also like, I was just talking about the regular, everyday, like college transitions.
Like, how am I going to do my laundry?
Yeah, literally that. Or like, I don't know, I literally ate ramen so much in college because I like didn't have time to go to I like wouldn't plan or whatever. And I was just like, a cup of noodles, like, here we go. And I was like, that's probably not great for fueling a Division I basketball player.
Right.
Like, I should figure that out. But yeah, I think with all of that too, it's like, but it's hard to let go of the role that you knew for so long.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think that at least I had enough self-awareness that I knew that the role I needed to play in my next chapter of life from high school to college was going to have to be something more than just me scoring 30 points a game.
Yeah.
It was going to be around, how am I going to give back to the sport that's given so much to me? And that's where I was teaching tennis at Indian Hill Country Club.
Yeah.
In my summer in 1999. And then also just as where OMG really organically started, which was teaching basketball to young girls in their driveways that were 3 or 4 years younger than I was.
Yeah.
And there was like a point of fulfillment there that I hadn't gotten from the sport prior to it. And that is where I knew that there was something inside that I said, this makes sense, and it's a way for me to be able to give back. And so as I got through college, there was a lot of time that was spent with the Duke Women's Basketball Program volunteering. And we would, run kids camps and do other stuff. And there was always that wholesome goodness feeling of it. But I think the WNBA was not where it was when I was graduating college. And so I had to figure out what that path was going to be. And the path for me was figuring out how to enter into corporate America for a job.
Talk about a transition.
Another
Wild.
transition,
Yeah.
right? Just after 4 years of college, where you feel like you're just kind of get your stride going. You had to go and re-enter again. Knowing that there was going to be something else, but I didn't want to let go of basketball. My place was, how am I going to scale this so that I'm impacting more than one girl in our driveway? Because I saw that it was more than just teaching a layup. It was going back to teaching this young girl how to stand up tall.
Totally.
And play your role. And that's where OMG Basketball was born and started. And, it took some time because I was coming from a totally different perspective than was out there in youth sports. There was a big push from youth sports because it had gone from all of the schools funding sports to privatization of the sports. And I did not want to be just one of those programs that were just trying to bring players in, warehouse it, and then send it out. Like, that was not my goal. It was more of how can we grow girls from second and third grade all the way through high school and then bring a mentoring piece into it, because it's a life cycle of an athlete. It's not just a snippet of that time. And so OMG Basketball was formed around that principle and teaching girls how to define their roles. And really, ultimately, is what our mission statement is teaching girls how to watch women lead. And that's purely kind of where OMG Basketball stands today.
I think that's why I love being a part of it so much. Obviously, we're both very competitive and we want to win. That doesn't happen all the time. But it's similar to therapy and coaching. And I mean, I know people don't love using those terms very connected, but it is similar because I will leave an individual therapy session and I'm like, I know that one thing stuck with them. And that's what a lot of therapists talk about. They're like, you maybe were an off day, maybe they were having an off day, whatever it is. But you're like, you can leave that conversation or that 55 minutes and you're like, I know there's one thing that I said or one thing that they thought during our time together that they are going to hold on to. And that's kind of something that I've had to learn too with this idea of taking being able to identify smaller wins, because again, you want that end goal and you have a goal to win a state championship or do that. And it's hard to recognize that there are all these smaller pieces in the ladder. But I think becoming a therapist and having gone to grad school and now coaching also, I'm like, okay, I was tired. I had a long work week of doing this. And now here I am and coaching or whatever. But when you see that light bulb moment of it click for someone, or I definitely love hanging out with the mini-me's of us, the taller ones on the team, and you can tell they're kind of a little awkward and confused and don't know what to do. And I'm just and that's where self-disclosure in therapy is also very important. But I love in the coaching environment, it doesn't need to be so formalized really. But I'm just hey, I totally remember being exactly oh, of course I'm just gonna go in the middle and I'm tall or I'm in the back of the pictures or whatever it is. But I literally had a conversation with one of our players during our scrimmage, and she's like, oh my God, yeah, so that was you too? She was like, oh, totally, that's me, thanks. And I was just yes, that moment, and that has nothing to do with basketball per se, but just having that conversation. And I didn't win any of the games I coached that day, but
that's a small win.
Yeah.
And you move the measuring stick, right? I think the problem, I think in youth sports anywhere, that's just basketball, is we focus on individual contribution. How many points are you going to score? How many goals are you going to make? How many matches are you going to win? There's more to sport than just that. And so if we take that off, and it's so important for those 1% of kids that are basically going to go and be Duke athletes or Georgetown athletes, right? Because there's a small percentage of those people are doing that, but there's this whole rest of the population that is still going to utilize sports for something more than I'm going to try and score 30 points in a game.
Totally.
It is, I am going to try to understand how to manage my day with school, piano, and a basketball practice, and still be able to spend time with my family and fuel my body and test my limits, right? Sports has that ability to test who you are in a way that's more than just, let's see how many games you're going to win today. And so you by measuring that, moving that kind of measuring stick allows you to see the greater benefit of that game because that young girl now may stand taller in the back of a picture.
Totally.
Because she realizes that she sees somebody that was who she is now.
Yeah.
And you're standing tall and coaching her. And to me, those are moments of big wins.
Totally. But like I had such a hard time doing the shift from like big wins, small wins. And now I like, even when I'm talking to my clients, I like explain that I go, just because I'm saying this does not mean that it's like totally 100% in practice in my life, which I love to also say. And they're like, well, yeah, I didn't think that you were like
perfect.
Yeah. I'm like, definitely not.
I'd like to be perfect.
Yeah. No, I think that's a huge shift that you have to make. And I think I stopped playing when I was a sophomore in college, but I like literally still feel like I'm transitioning out of playing now. I mean, it's been 5 years, but like I still feel like I'm totally transitioning out of playing. And at Millennium in our athlete wellness division, we're really listening to our clients too. And a lot of our college athletes are like, what the heck do I do now? Or people, some of my soccer player or volleyball player, their seasons just ended. And they're like, I'll also talk about the relationship to working out. They're like, do I have to wake up at 6 a.m. and go to Core Power tomorrow? And I'm like, no, you don't. But for so long, that a lot of people do that. I fell into going to work out. Like when I stopped playing and once I was healthy again, I needed to go to like group fitness classes. I couldn't just like go to
community.
I needed the community. And it's just great to have those conversations with people. And that's why I love like what I do, being able to coach and being able to just like talk to people every day, once a week, every day. Like it's great. And they always share just being able, like how they feel. They're like, okay, I don't exactly know what we got out of this today, but like I feel lighter and I feel heard. And I feel like we're able to do that when we're coaching too. And we provide the space for that. I wanted you to talk a little bit about like other things that you incorporate at OMG outside of like an hour and a half practice. Like you make time for, I know I'm going to go talk a little bit about like either like positive self-talk or mantras and confidence and all that kind of stuff. But like, that's always, not every program is doing that. That is definitely for sure. And like when did that become a priority for you? Was that always so clear? And just like, how have you been able to find the time and the energy and all when everyone has these busy schedules to like make that happen?
Yeah. I mean, it's always been part of the mission at OMG, right? Is understanding that we're teaching more than just basketball. And to me, we've had Division 1, 2, and 3 athletes go on and play basketball that were part of OMG. I'm a program that I don't sit there and I publicize
Tally
it.
up, yeah.
And I don't tally it up because to me, that's not, because what we're driving for is not how many wins, we're going to get. Because we're not a win-at-all-cost program. We traditionally go back to like competing, true competition, and the learnings and findings that you find out of competition. And so I think that the thing that I start thinking about, when OMG was, if athletes define their roles as more than just scoring, what else is important to them? And you have to look at the overall athlete. And the overall athlete is, well, I have to play basketball. I have to feel my body to play basketball. I have to feel my brain to play basketball. I have to also not just play basketball.
Yeah.
I have to do schoolwork. I have to be a daughter to my parents. I have to be a sibling or a cousin, right, to my family. There's so many roles that this girl in the gym is going to play that we needed to touch on. And some of the stuff we try to do focuses on like hitting the big buckets, like mental health, physical health, what you're putting in your body, fueling your health and sleep. And so like, I feel like those 4 big buckets is that if you find balance in those 4, you're at least creating stability in that girl and that she'll be able to thrive and stand proud.
Yeah. Giving yourself like a chance.
Giving yourself the best chance. Like that's the biggest thing, right? Like all these young girls that walk in the gym have an opportunity that so many other girls in the world don't have, which is extracurricular sports, right? And the opportunity for them to do that is we want to bring out the best in them and set them up for as much success as possible. Yes, they're going to have to take it a step further and be able to do extra practice or spend extra time in the gym if they're like missing left-handed layups.
Totally.
That's going to be on them, right? We can guide them, and those are some of the things that we do through our OMG challenges that we do. But there are things that that you're trying to lead them to that they can then take ownership and do if they really want to become.
Yeah. I think that's been something, I think we grew up with very similar mindsets. Like, you need to put in the work. You need, nothing is going to be given to you. There's a reason that the people that Steph Curry comes to mind, but I was watching the documentary on Netflix, Starting Five. LeBron, so good. They get to the gym, and this is such a cliche statement, but they get to the gym 2 hours before everyone else or whatever it may be. You have to be willing to put in that work. And I think now being talking to, a lot of my day whether it's talking to younger, 4th, 5th graders or people at OMG or college athletes who are now people who are younger than me, which I'm whoa, this is weird. How am I in this role? But it's finding a way to still promote that, you need to hold yourself accountable.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, where I'm sometimes struggle in both of these roles. It's just sometimes you have to put your head down and do it.
Do the work.
And I think it's hard with the kind of, I'm so happy that mental health is being talked about way more than it ever has been. But I also think it's not sure, we're not going to practice today. We're going to talk about nutrition. That is so important. But it's also okay, if we didn't get to what we needed to get to, you either need to stay later or wake up tomorrow morning. There's more work that needs to be done. So I think it's hard. Adding all of these extra things oftentimes takes more time.
Yeah.
But you have to be committed. So I guess, I don't know. And you were just talking a little bit about it, but how do you where's that line of protect your peace, but also it's not going to be great and you're going to have to sacrifice some things. And if you want to, and this is anything in life, obviously sports, if you want to be the best, you have to put in the work. And I think, I don't know, it's just, I'm seeing a generational shift sometimes. And we talk a lot about that here with the other therapists and the athlete wellness. But sometimes I'm just I don't know what else to say. You need to go to the gym. You need to get better,
But I think we define our goals of of what we want to do and what we accomplish at OMG. And I think that's the beauty of it. If you empower each of these young girls to let them know, this is our common goal that we have of what we have together for the next 4 months. This is what we want you to accomplish. We're not asking you to win every single basketball game. We are not asking you to just go through the motions either. But we're going to find a happy medium. And that happy medium is we want you to improve your skills. We want you to make some new friends. We want you to communicate to your teammates and your coaches and work on that. Eye contact,
body language.
Body language. Right. Those things are super important. And I feel if you set those goals ahead of time on those off days that you're talking about, even though we're going to have to talk about what are you feeling your body with today? What are you eating today? Did you get enough sleep today? And we have to take some time out of the day to talk about that. You still have to reserve the remainder of the time that you have of that hour and a half practice to accomplish that end of the season goal.
Totally.
Which is get better at basketball, work on your communication and improve your individual skills. So I think it's a balancing act, but you have to be clearly defining what
from the beginning, which is a huge thing that when I was growing up and I was playing travel basketball, there was never talk of these goals that you needed to get to or that you wanted to check in about. And we do a good job of checking in with them too and seeing where people are at. And in working with some of my college teams now, and I've kind of, in the past few months when I've been doing this, it's so important to start with the goals. It's also really great because then you can go back to those.
Yeah, and
you can be
measure against.
Something to measure against. This, I'm not just kind of getting down on this one girl for the first time because whatever she's doing. I'm just remember the things that we talked about earlier. This is fully in accordance to that. What I'm talking about is something that we have previously established that we've all decided to be bought into together, So I think that's I think it's way easier to hold people accountable when you have the framework already in place.
Yeah.
How do you personally, doing all of this, you also have a day job?
I do have a day job.
You have that as well. But and not much time. But when you are like overwhelmed or stressed out or frustrated, what is your like mental health zen thing that you do to like bring you down, bring you back to the present moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to the beginning part of our conversation, right? Like when I got injured, I just went back to working out.
Yeah.
So like I had to control what I can control. And when the world starts spinning and it starts moving as million miles a minute, because there are days that it does, I have to center myself in a place of where I just can get a sweat in and feel that like I'm recentered. And then that way I can go accomplish anything else.
I'm the exact same way. Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. It just mentally kind of gets me there. And my workouts are what fuel, I think, my energy. And I think without them, I struggle. You know, and so I work out 6 days a week.
Yeah. I'll literally be like, oh, like, why am I extra tired today? Or like that week kind of sucked. I was like, oh, I only got like one really good workout in. But also, I think I've had to change my outlook on things. I'm like, what counts and what doesn't count? Like, I used to be like, now I like sometimes I'll work out for like 30 to 45 minutes and I'm like, does that count? Like, that wasn't enough. And that's because of my identity as an athlete. I'm just like, or like, no one really told me like, good job today, or like, you put in the work. I'm kind of like, now that's my internal dialogue. And I'm like, did that count? Like, is that enough? And I'm like, no, like just getting there and doing something is good enough. I think especially when life gets going and I have needed to shift that like a 30-minute workout is better than nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because I'm older than you, but I think the thing is that I used to be able to get a workout in by going and running like 5-6 miles and doing like a sprint workout.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, I've had 2 knee surgeries. I have a torn hip labrum.
Yeah.
So my sprint workouts don't really happen anymore. So it's more of,
but like there's some judgment there. We're laughing, but there's so much judgment.
There's so much.
Like why can I not do that?
Yeah, there are so many moments that I'm like, just get your butt on a treadmill or outside and run. But my knee will ache for days, right? Yeah. And I can't do it to my body. So I've had to shift that even now as an adult to say like, how do I still feel balanced without doing exactly what I used to do? But I think that's the beauty of evolving, right? Because you are now realizing that there are other ways that you can look at yourself and say, you did good today.
Yeah.
And I just feel like as long as I can get a sweat in and I have sweat coming off of my head, I feel like, okay, I can check the box and say that I did good today.
But I think even like having conversations like this, or now like being in a role as a coach and being here as a therapist in the athlete wellness division, like even just talking about this right now will like, yesterday I went to Barry's and I was like, and they're talk about like numbers. They really give you the numbers to go for, which I like because
I used to do shred all the time.
Yeah. And I'm literally like, okay, well, on Monday, like I hit this number and I need to hit this next number. And then I'm like, okay, Lily, but like it doesn't need to be that deep. But like me a few years ago wouldn't have been able to step back and like have that reflective moment.
Yeah.
And now I'm able to, which is kind of what I remind myself and oftentimes what I bring up with clients too. I'm just like, slow down and like reflect. And I think becoming a therapist and being in grad school, and especially now being a coach and being like in charge of things, you need to be able to reflect and pull out, like, again, the small win. Because if you don't,
I mean, because it's so
tiring.
Easy. It's so easy to get so caught in the rhythm of your day, right? And I think that, like, if you're going from the gym to your work to social event, whatever, and you're just going through the motions, I think actively being present and aware of your surroundings and, like, being in a moment with somebody, like those are the times that I think you can make those realizations, and they're so rewarding.
Yeah. Are you like a mindfulness person? Have you like do you practice mindfulness? Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, I mean, like I started learning about it in college because I was battling the injuries. I was trying to understand, you know, who my next role was. Who Olga was as her next role, and I spent a lot of time doing that there, and I still continue to do it now because I agree. Like, you know, running sales teams and running a company, you just kind of feel like, okay, are we growing? Are we hitting the mark? And you just have to step back and take a moment and mindfully
Yeah.
kind of put yourself in place. So yes, I do those exercises, but it's so hard because personally, my expectations, I feel like, are always higher than what I'm getting at. But that's a good thing because then that probably makes it grow faster.
Yes. Yeah, probably. No, but I have kind of fallen into my I'm obsessed with mindfulness right now. And we talk a lot right now in this conversation. We've talked about being in the present moment, but I also think this is what I want to talk about with all of the girls. But it's just something that I always talk to with my clients about is literally the quickest thing that you can do is just okay, your 5 senses. What are 5 things that you can point out right now? If you're dysregulated or you're overwhelmed or you can't find that energy, it's let me put my 2 feet on the ground and literally name 5 things. It takes how many seconds? 10 seconds, maybe. Yeah. I don't even know. And it's wild if you get into that practice and you're consistent with it too. Talk about consistency and routines. That's a huge component too. But it's wild what that can do. And I used to be the type of person where I was okay, what is that going to do? There's no way. And now I'm just don't knock it until you try it, which is just wild.
No, because it resets you. So I really think about breathing.
Breath, yeah.
Breath for me is a big one. And I've always been that as an athlete. And then also now in running what I'm doing now. But I think breath has been a big thing for me because I feel I clench and
my jaw is all, I'm okay, Jesus Christ.
Relax,
yeah.
Right. And I think even just going through breathing, even at points where you're stressed or irritated or just aggravated, I go back to breath because if I can get that settled, then I feel everything else does.
It's the quickest way to your nervous system.
Right.
Yeah.
To resetting, right? That vagus nerve. So,
okay. What are some of the most rewarding moments in building the business, in coaching specifically? Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, they're super rewarding moments. And I think it's going back to the small wins.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's moments that a girl looks at you and just says, I get it.
Yeah.
I get what you're talking about with help defense.
Yeah, literally.
Or all of a sudden they're they say at the first day of practice, I can't make any left-hand layups. And it's a right-handed player. And one of our rules at OMG is you can't, or
rules, yeah.
Yeah, one of the rules, you can't say I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And it just consciously has them aware of not using can't instead of changing their mindset to say, okay, keep working on it.
Yeah.
You're not doing it well right now, but keep doing it. Those are, I think, are really rewarding moments.
Yeah.
We also have a mentoring program built into OMG where I have high school aged players that were part of OMG in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And now they're playing at their high school teams and they come back and coach and they help the head coaches, the sidelines. And there's moments that we'll be talking to them. And those are moments that I also remember because they look at me and say, I was at practice today and my coach was telling me about being in deny and putting pressure on the ball when we're in this game situation. And she literally will then say, I just had that same conversation with a girl today at practice.
Yeah.
And I'm oh yeah, the light just went on for you.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's the learning moments though. You even think about studying for an exam. The best way to learn is to teach. So, I mean, no, I probably would have loved to. I mean, that's something when I was injured too. And I think my high school coach did a very good job of which I think I would love to talk to coaches about how to best support their injured athletes. And that's a whole nother conversation I think I could have.
That is a whole nother conversation.
But it's very easy to feel isolated. But I think something that helped me talk about support going through an injury, I was the second person on the bench, in between my 2 assistant coaches. And I remember I had so much growth in that 1 year that I was playing or that I wasn't playing. But I think that's what I'm getting at was the same kind of moment that you were reflecting on too. Again, pulling back, slowing down, allowing yourself the time and the space to take a different perspective and reflect is when it all kind of comes together.
Yeah. I mean, my injury was super important, I think, to who I am today because I was on this fast roller coaster of just wanting to play professional and, getting there.
Your end goal, yeah.
My end goal, right? And it made me focus and think about who I was as a whole person. I think that really helped me with my coaching that I do today because it's like you said, like you're sitting next to the coaches, listening to them have a completely different conversation than you and your teammates are having in their locker room.
Exactly. Yeah, it's wild. Well, I'm so happy that basketball at the end of the day has brought us together. And I'm so happy that I can get to do this. And this maybe needs to become a series because we could talk for literally hours. I'm thinking of so many different directions that we could go. But thank you for coming and joining us
thanks
today.
So much for letting me be a guest.
And yeah, good luck with that one, Eric. Okay, we are done.